So there they were, Simon, Andrew, standing there by the water, throwing their nets in and hauling them back out. It's a sight that I happened to see back in September when I was in Hawaii. A man standing out on a rocky promontory, throwing that net. And I watched as it arced in the air and landed, and he began hauling in his catch. It's exactly what those two brothers were doing, making their living fishing. Now, Simon and Andrew were of the poorer sort, fishing there from the shore. They didn't have the wherewithal to have a boat to go out to where the good catch was. They were making ends meet. And then Jesus came by. Jesus that they had no doubt seen before. They had heard him probably at some point. They had certainly heard John the Baptizer speaking of him. And so when Jesus showed up on the shore of the lake that day and said, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fish for people," they were ready to respond. These men who knew about fishing for fish were getting ready to start a new trade. Moments passed when the boat came into sight with James and John on board, and perhaps a couple other folks. These were Zebedee's boys. You know them, I'm sure. Zebedee's boys who'd been out fishing ever since they were just little guys who had grown into manhood and were now carrying their part of the family business, crewing the boat that went out from the shore every morning and came back every evening, hopefully loaded down with fish. It was a pretty good business, this having a boat. Getting to go out to where the fish would shoal and the dropping of the net over the side would usually involve a pretty good haul back. These two young men had risen not just to the place where they could handle the nets and work the sails and the tiller, but where they could command the crew as well as they did the work. Yes, James and John had a much different life of fishing than those other brothers, Simon and Andrew. They were part of that family business, and no doubt Zebedee counted on them to be there. But Jesus gave them that same word, "Come with me and I will teach you to fish for people." And so, just as Simon and Andrew had left their nets hanging there to dry, James and John beached the boat and went off following Jesus. It's a great story. It's something that I think we look back on and say, gee, isn't that lovely how 2,000 years ago people followed Jesus when he asked them? We, of course, are kind of busy fishing, aren't we? I know that there's a lot of fishing to be done. That busyness that keeps us from following when Jesus says, "Come with me and I'm going to show you something new. I'm going to teach you something different. I'm going to help you reach out to other people." And we say, you know, that is wonderful, but somebody's got to catch the fish. I know that I feel that way sometimes. That I'm so busy catching fish, that I'm so busy doing the work of church, or the work of the hospital, or the work of buying groceries, or the work of putting the car in the shop so that the warranty isn't voided, that I don't have time to learn something new. That I don't have time to hear a new call. That I don't have time to follow. Something tells me you may be like that yourselves. We move to the letter to the Corinthians, where Paul speaks to the church gathered in that one place and that one time, and he he sees the division in the ranks and he tells them, I am so glad that I didn't baptize any of you. Yeah, that's what he said. You read that. I heard you. Can you imagine a pastor saying to a congregation, I am so glad I didn't baptize any of you? This would not be a compliment. Paul is looking at a church that is factionalized, that is saying, well, I am of the party of Apollos, and so I've got my theology right. And others are saying, no, I'm of the party of Cephas, and that's the good guys. And then, of course, there are the people who look down on both parties and say, yes, but I was baptized in the name of Jesus. And Paul tears his hair out and says, I'm so glad that I didn't baptize any of you, because I know that if I did, some of you would be saying, well, I'm on Paul's team. And as nice as it might be to have a church full of people saying, I'm on Paul's team, don't do it. You know, Paul was looking at this church that was split, not down the middle, but split into all kinds of warring groups, and the best he could offer them is, I'm so glad I didn't baptize any of you jerks. Okay, it doesn't say jerks, but I'd like to tell you it's there in the original Greek thought. He just knew better than to write it down. No, Paul reminds the church that we're called to community, that we're called to be one people, that we're called to follow Christ together. And that's an important thing. For we are indeed called to community, even when it's hard. You know, these days it's really hard to be a community. Last week, as we had our worship service prior to the inauguration, and I preached on baptism, and I mentioned how Martin Luther would face the darkness of his soul, he would face the trials that were coming his way, and he would say, Martin, remember, you are baptized. And I had one member of this congregation stop me after worship. In a line where you all go through and say, nice sermon. You know that line? And this church member said to me, so you're telling me that it's all going to be okay just because I'm baptized? Zing. And my response was, no, not remotely. Because baptism is the beginning. Calling is the second part. Because our baptism includes us in the body of Christ, but our calling to be disciples is where the difference happens. To be disciples journeying together, to walk in community as we do here each week. But not just as learners, not just as worshipers, but as people who, just like those first disciples, Andrew and Simon, and James and John, are sent out to be fishers of people, to be folks who reach out and bring people together. People called to service. You know, we do this all the time. And Val, I was joking with you this morning about Val makes an announcement every Sunday announcement, which isn't actually true. I think you missed a Sunday once. Yeah, when you were in Missouri, exactly. You didn't make any announcements then. But no, there's always something going on that calls us to service, whether it's at Dorothy Day making meals, or putting together backpacks for children, or toiletry items, or responding as we do to natural disasters. We're always called to be people of action and people of service. People who point the world to a better way, who point to God's love as being transformative and unifying and beneficial. We do a lot. And I'd like to thank all of you for the parts that each one of you takes in sharing God's love. We have a lot of work left to do. This has been an interesting week. On Friday, just moments after Trump was inaugurated as president, a drunken man waving a campaign sign showed up at Danbury High School screaming at minority students, telling them that they would all be deported. Yeah, here in Denver. Oh, we are called to take a different stance, to speak out against anger and hatred with the word of love and inclusion. We are called to tell people, you are welcome, you are safe, you are loved. Yesterday, some 3 million people gathered in Washington, D.C. and New York, in cities across the country, in cities around the world, and yes, even in Antarctica. There are photos. Photos don't lie. But there are photos of people gathering in all 7 continents, not saying what they're against, but saying what they're for. The Women's March. I hate to admit it, I was having my car serviced. I couldn't be there. But watching my Facebook feed, I saw that nearly every other clergy colleague that I have was somewhere. Members of every congregation I've ever served were representing, as were members of this church, too. And there were creative signs. Wow, were there some creative signs. But my favorite, it read, and I'm reading off of a photograph of the sign here. My church teaches me, Black lives matter. Women's rights are human rights. No human is illegal. Climate change is real. Love is love. God is still speaking. You know, I've got a problem. I'm a straight white man. And in the United Church of Christ, we have so many folks who represent different constituencies. And as the straight white male, I am not really part of any of those. And sometimes I've got to admit that at national gatherings I have seen folks saying, the most important issue is fill in the blank. And then I see someone else with a different issue saying the most important, and we get to the place where we have dueling issues. And as someone who holds them all dear, I was delighted to see yesterday where people came not for one issue, but to support each other, to stand in solidarity for what should be. It was impressive. I was reminded of what President Obama said shortly after landing at Andrews Air Force Base after leaving the White House, when he said, "This is not a period. This is a comma in the continuing story of building America." This is not a period. It's a comma. One could almost be led to believe that Obama is not Muslim. Perhaps that he's a member of our United Church of Christ, using the language that we have been using and talking about listening to the voice of the still speaking God, calling us together, calling us to listen. What is God saying to us? How is God building community? Where is God leading us? How is God calling us to discipleship and faithfulness and to reaching out to fish for people to bring in to this one place together where we can be unified? Now, I don't want you to go thinking that this is a political sermon, because it really isn't. It's a human sermon. It's not about Republican and Democrat. It's not about government. It's about community. It's about supporting each other and making sure that people are safe, valued, that their needs are met. Is there room for disagreement? Absolutely there is. That's what governance is about. But at the root, civilization is about looking out for each other. My prayer for our nation, for our state, for our church, for you and for me, is that we might look out for each other. That like the Apostle Paul urged the church, we too might live in unity. That we might follow the call of Christ. To set aside those things that distract us. And to get to the work of fishing for people. Of bringing people together. May we then respond faithfully. May we respond as God's own people. And in doing so, may we be blessed. Amen.